Brian Kelly, the head football coach at Notre Dame, actually has a team in one place together for the first time in months. And Brian joins us now. This is strange because usually, Brian, we're getting to this point of the summer where you get a chance to catch your breath for the season. I was starting to do the math. This is almost the ramp up that's going to run all the way through if you are playing football, hopefully to January.
That's true, Mike. Good to see you also. And certainly talking about golf, with David Faraday, this is normally where I play a few rounds of golf and feel like I get competitive enough that I can talk about my golf game. That has not happened at all with all of these Zoom calls. You feel like you're plugged in all the time. But I'm going to be excited to watch a lot of golf on NBC and certainly because it is going to be different. We're going to have to crank this thing up because we've had virtually 3 months of inactivity with our football team. We didn't have a spring ball. We didn't have really formalized weight training and conditioning. So when we bring the team back, as you mentioned, safety, the health is at the forefront of what we do. But we're going to have to gradually get this football team back to a conditioning level that is really effective for playing this game of football. And it's going to take us a lot of time. And that means we have to be with this football team in July and in August to get them ready for September.
So let's walk folks through, Brian, what the NCAA allowed and then what Notre Dame started to do as your players got to a hotel there and then going to start the process of quarantine to get ready to start working out in small groups.
Yeah, so we'll be beginning that process next Thursday. So players that have to fly will need to be in a 7-day quarantine. They'll stay right on campus here at the Morris Inn. The Morris Inn has been kind of the hotel on campus that has taken care of our students, our international students that have been here on campus. So they're really good at having all the procedures and protocols in place. So it's going to be a great situation for our players as they come back. If you're driving, it's a 3-day quarantine. And then we'll all test on the 19th. I'm looking up at my calendar to make sure that I have the dates correct. But I'm in my office, my home away from office. So I've got whiteboards and things all over the place. But so as we work through this process, we want to put a football team in the weight room in conditioning that has tested entirely. And then we go to work on CDC protocols. There'll be masks and distancing and sanitizing, and we'll have to make sure our meals follow through with those protocols. Coaches will have to do Zoom meetings as we work through 3 phases, 2 weeks each phase. As we get through that 2 weeks without any setbacks, we'll move to a second phase that gives us the opportunity to do more with larger groups and begin to interact more with our team. So there's a lot of work here. Our group has done an incredible job. Dr. Leisler, Rob Hunt. Locally, we've had incredible help from the Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, to help us in this really unique time for all of us.
Now, the schedule has been bandied about a lot. Are there going to be non-conference games, a lot of travel? Obviously, the game with Navy that was scheduled for Ireland was moved back to Navy's campus, to Annapolis, which will be a first in the long history of the Notre Dame Navy series. Anything else on the schedule right now in question from where you sit on this day?
Well, as you know, we play in a lot of NFL stadiums right now. And so, what is the NFL's procedure relative? If you just look down the schedule right now, Wisconsin Wake Forest, starting with Wake Forest, that was scheduled to be played, in an NFL stadium. So where does that fall in terms of Panther Stadium? Wisconsin and Lambeau Field, Pitt at Pitt Stadium, Georgia Tech, in Atlanta at the Falcon Stadium. So what's the NCAA and what is the NFL doing relative to stadium capacity? Because those are large stadiums, and so you're sharing gates there. Do those go back on campus? I think Jack Swarbrick is in a lot of conversations as to whether those go back on campus or do they stay in NFL stadiums.
The conversation of playing football has seem to be hand in glove, Brian, with kids being back on campus, because the conversation of separating the two was a non-starter for a lot of schools. Some conferences, Notre Dame was at the forefront of that. There's been talk that maybe we'll see the students in the stadium to start with. Have you heard anything about that? So there's some sort of an atmosphere that you guys are playing with if things continue on this path as we get towards August and September.
I think that's a fair assumption that I'm willing to make, and then I think that our administration is willing to make, that our students could be part of this. If they're going to be on campus, I think it's fair to say that students, faculty, staff, does that open it up to season ticket holders? I think everybody's looking at what the equation is and what the number is, and then I was forwarded a picture from during the Spanish flu, Notre Dame was playing Georgia Tech, and the pictures were everybody in the stands had masks on. So we've been down this road before. So if it requires those kinds of things, that's what it's going to maybe take for the price of admission, if you will, to watch a football game this fall. And I don't know that that's such a heavy price to pay. So there are going to be some changes certainly in the landscape, but modern technology is filled in nicely with big jumbotrons. I think we can pump in some loud noise if we need to.
If you have to do that and just to change the atmosphere a little bit, just have some people there who I think will be at least a little bit more acceptable to folks who are watching on TV and hearing some natural reaction, and for the players and atmospherics as well. All right, the George Floyd death. He's being buried today in Houston. The conversation has been in every corner of the country, every aspect of our sports world. What's it been like in the Zoom calls with your players?
Well, I think that's where you start, right? You look at, first of all, getting the pulse of your football team. And our team was at first angry. They were confused. There were a lot of raw emotions, and you want to get those out and give your football team a platform where they can speak, they can talk, and most importantly, Mike, where they can be heard and then have actionable things take place. We've started a unity council on our football team so we can begin to look at things within our own program that we can get better at, where I can be a better leader for our football team and we can take on the systemic racism that exists in our country today, what we can do on campus as a football team and as a university. Look, we failed, and we have to come to grips with that. And so giving our players a voice, which we have through social media, giving them opportunities to understand where they can make a difference, whether it's in voter registration locally, whether it's being involved in more national events as well. But talking about it is the first step, but it can't be the last step. We have to have actionable things that we can put in front of our players and give them an opportunity. And I think that that's where it started with us in our first set of Zoom calls.
And it's such a unique place for this conversation because it's not just Notre Dame, but many private universities around the country have a very strong presence of Caucasian, of white students, and African-American students oftentimes are in a smaller percentage and are facing different challenges on that campus. And then you have the high-profile African-American students, like the athletes, who really are right in the forefront of being the most recognizable faces on campus. So I would imagine, Brian, that your players, especially your juniors and seniors, really can add to this conversation in a very unique way that's educational for the staff and for the white players on the team.
No, there's no doubt. And so the juxtaposition of that too, Mike, is that our football team is 58% African American, and in a university that is 80-20. And so they can make a huge difference because they are the leaders of our football team. And so when they become leaders of our football team and are respected by everybody on our campus, that is a strong platform to come from. So we're encouraging them for their voice to be heard. And that resonates with them because they come to Notre Dame wanting their voice to be heard. So we're just providing them their opportunity for that to happen, and then giving them different platforms, whether it's, again, on our campus or off our campus, doing it together, doing it individually, all those things have to be available for our student athletes.
As we wrap, Brian, I'm just curious, all the COVID-19 stuff and all the protocols that football coaches, medical staff have to be involved with, this situation, dealing head on with racial injustice, concerns of your players. Have you had the time as a head coach to spend on football here in the off season that normally is the biggest part of looking at the off season, but it feels like because of everything else, that's been harder for you guys to get to?
Um, football is still really a simple game. It's about the organization. It's about the relationships. It's about getting the most out of your young men on a day-to-day basis. And again, not just your players, but your entire staff. I don't know that anybody's reinvented the X's and the O's. We'll be ready for that when it's time. I think dealing with these very, very important issues of safety and health and systemic issues in our society, these life issues are much more important. And that's what I'm hired for, these much more important issues. I've got a great staff. We'll figure out how to kick out the defensive end and get up inside the C gap. We'll figure that out. These are other issues that need to be handled on a day-to-day basis. And I think I've been properly trained to do that.
It might be a chance for the mission of colleges and universities to reconnect with athletics, as we've seen happen at Notre Dame, especially over these last few years. Year 11 coming up for Brian Kelly, 30 years as a college football head coach. Thanks. We appreciate the time. Hope the family and everybody stays well, and good luck here with phase 1 and 2 as the Irish get back to South Bend. Talk to you soon, Brian.
Thanks, Mike. Same to you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.